think too, like the tools that we have were not specifically built for the nuances of a human community and connection. I mean, Zoom is a very difficult platform to have a group conversation. And so I thought it was very strange where at the beginning everyone was having these Zoom calls with like 40 people, but that always seemed very strange to me because it was just like one person talking and it was awkward and like there wasn't a good mechanism. So I think what's interesting is that this has shown the need for digital experiences that are designed in a way that are made to facilitate like human interaction. The thing that I will say, like the 2 points that I think about what's happening with this particular context is one, you cannot underestimate the emotional lack of security that people feel economically during this time. And much like the 2008 financial crisis, I think what's going to happen is that from at least all my friends that own restaurants and bars and quite in real life businesses, the consensus that I'm hearing is we will never leave ourselves vulnerable again to in real life revenue streams only. So from that respect, I think digital as a diversifier is going to be a security step that many people take, as that has been something that I've consistently been hearing and seeing across the board. The other thing too, which is a bit maybe more nuanced and less about the technology, but more about like work culture, is I find it kind of, I don't want to say sad, but I'm feeling resistance to the idea that everything we do for leisure can be monetized as a side hustle. That like everything that we do, whether we're playing video games or making stuff or we're on Animal Crossing, that the instinct should be that should be a way to earn money. I think we have a lot of problem with overwork. And when you look at the virtual economy, when you look at esports, when you look at YouTube influencers, when you look at all of these communities, mental health and the complete control by the algorithm that favors and encourages constant, nonstop creation is not sustainable over the long term. And I think we're going to see the more wide scale emergence of mental health issues in response to this. So from a cultural perspective, I always hesitate. Like the other day on social media, I was talking to somebody about like, it's okay to have a hobby. It's okay to do something just for the joy of doing it and not immediately think, how can I earn money from this? So that doesn't mean that I don't want people to obviously diversify and earn income. I just think the point should be made on a cultural level of the message we're sending, A, and B, to recognize that, as Nadia said, as this has accelerated the virtual economy, that the issues of mental health, specifically within the virtual economy, has been a long presence, has been talked about. I mean, Ninja talked about how his marriage almost broke down. He almost had a nervous breakdown because he felt that the algorithm, in order to maintain his standard of living, in order to maintain his income, needed to see him streaming 12 hours a day. So I think these are the cultural parameters that I would like to see included as we start making suggestions, as we start funding startups, as we start investing our attention and our time and our money into these ventures. It's like, well, what is the cultural impact of this? And are we prepared to manage the mental well-being that existed far before COVID-19 and is just also being amplified?
Yeah, you raise lots of brilliant questions there about the idea that the virtual world doesn't have a social welfare infrastructure. It doesn't have a health system. It doesn't have public goods. It doesn't have parklands. Yeah, everywhere is owned. Every virtual step you take in the virtual world is owned by somebody. And that means it's always on. There is no respite. And that's a really valid point about mental health. And I think the point about diversification of income makes me feel like maybe what we might see as a consequence of this is a similar kind of frugality to what the baby boomer generation experienced post-war, a sense of nascent preparation for something to go wrong, an expectation that something would go wrong. How that manifests itself, I think, will be curious. It may not necessarily be savings because interest rates are so low, but it may well be a diversification of income streams. And the thing I think that you make really clear is that when we consider emerging technology that's useful in this space, so if we look at the next 10 years, it becomes clear that in terms of interacting with things and the world around us, augmented reality and mixed reality and X reality is almost unbeatable in the terms of the future it can offer. But when it comes to interacting with people, and especially in closed environments, it's looking more and more like virtual reality is the solution that we're likely to see there. Well, I don't mean directly interpersonal, but I mean over distance. You know, people now, most people have people who they care about who are distant from them, and virtual reality solves for a lot of the problems that you brought up with the likes of a Zoom, that it can be difficult to have multi-person conversations. But in a VR space, you can turn around, the audio adjusts, and now instead of being drowned out by somebody else, you're talking to the person in front of you in VR. So